Time for another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. But don't blame Jeff. Don't blame me. And, well, you can blame Sam. It's Sam's fault. No, I'm just kidding. It's the Kansas City Chiefs' fault. We're a little bit early. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be a part of the conversation in the chat room on the stream. We normally go Fridays at 10 a.m., going a little bit early, 9 a.m., so we apologize for some folks that we may miss. But the Kansas City Chiefs sliding in some media late last night, making the decision to make Andy Reid available. So we're going a little bit early today. A lot to cover. Steve Spagnuolo, Matt Nagy, Mike Borgonzi, all interviewing for jobs. What will this mean for the Kansas City Chiefs? Is there one that's a good fit for any of the guys? Who's the biggest threat to the Chiefs in getting to the Super Bowl? How the other AFC quarterbacks are closing the gap on Patrick Mahomes. Are they? Ranking the four potential opponents for the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll do that. We'll make our predictions on the games. We'll also make our predictions for the Super Bowl. It's coming up right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it. Get with Dave and he'll have you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Off and running here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. And Jeff, let's dive right in. Losing Steve Spagnuolo, Matt Nagy, they're interviewing for jobs. Assistant General Manager Mike Borgonzi. Chiefs finally getting some interest, a little bit long overdue, to see some names pop up with the kind of success they've had on the field, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look, a couple of those guys have already been head coaches, and so that's not surprising that it's a little bit longer for those guys to get back into the mix. Borgonzi is a little different situation. You would have thought with the success that they've had over the years, and with Ryan Poles leaving to go to the Bears a few years ago, he would have been a hot name if you go back to when John Dorsey got fired, that Borgonzi and Brett Veach had the same position within the franchise, so it seemed like they were on equal footing. And obviously Veach elevated, but that doesn't mean Borgonzi was some kind of lackey. So it's good to see them all getting into the mix. I keep forgetting about Brant Tillis too with Carolina Panthers now. So we'll see what happens. But I think the big issue for a lot of these guys is that the perception around the NFL is long been that the Chiefs win because of two guys, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, how about it, Sam? How much? Yeah, I love the point about Ryan Poles getting a shot. Is Ryan Poles one of the reasons why it took a little time for Borgonzi? It hadn't exactly been a rocket ship there in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I thought he should have been getting interviews before Ryan Poles. I mean, he had a higher job on the Chiefs totem pole in the front office than Ryan Poles did, and it always surprised me that, Poles got a job before Borgonzi was really getting in these interview cycles. Last year with Washington was his first interview, and now he's interviewing with the Jets, or he's already completed that interview this week. And I still think Tennessee probably reaches out to him as well. But I totally agree with Jeff. The perception around the league is that we don't have that quarterback and we don't have that head coach. So can you replicate everything you've done there in our job here? I think what's misinterpreted is that there's a reason the Chiefs are the first team in NFL history to win with their quarterback occupying more than 13% of the salary cap, and they've done it twice. Like, they win on the margins of the edges of the roster more than I think they get credit for. And This year's draft, I think, has not been great. The other drafts have been really good. And Mike Borgonzi is a lead voice in that room come draft time, come scouting time. He's the guy at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he does a lot of their scouting stuff, and I think is just a really influential opinion when it comes to who they're going to take. And like I said, when it comes to getting these undrafted, I mean, the Chiefs have had success with undrafted talent too. And I think it speaks to the NFL that Mike Borgonzi hasn't gotten a shot yet. And what I mean by that is I don't know that other owners do enough research to figure out who does what in other front offices. And I think if owners did more research, that Mike Borgonzi would have had a shot a couple of years ago already.
That's interesting. Let's talk about the caliber of job for Borgonzi, for Matt Nagy. Nagy interviewing with the Jets. Steve Spagnuolo interviewing with the Jets, Raiders, Jaguars. What do we think? I mean, are these jobs, Jeff, that these men should want?
Oh, there are good jobs out there. I mean,
but are these good jobs?
Yeah. Look, if I'm Steve Spagnuolo, that Jets job is very appealing. You could argue that the Jets, the Jets have more defensive talent than the Chiefs have. And the idea of Steve Spagnuolo with a defense that already has Quinnen Williams and CJ Mosley and Sauce Gardner in the works, I think that could be a pretty appealing position for him. He's a New York guy, East Coast guy.
So that just to be clear,
I bet he lives right. He's living in the East Coast now. Before he came,
and it has quite a reputation in New York.
Yeah, history in New York.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that to me is very intriguing. I think probably could be a real thing for him, given that they're not going to get Mike Vrabel. So, but yeah, I mean, Nagy. The Saints seem to be the team that has the most interest in him. I don't know if that's as great a job given their salary cap situation and the quarterback's kind of up in the air. But again, you don't get to pick how great the job is when you go into it. You got to make it work. And so I think for both those guys, Borgonzi is a different situation because when you're the GM, you have different factors play into your success. But for those two guys, I think that there are jobs out there that could be good for them if they got them.
What do you think, Sam? Are you a fan of the of any of these jobs? Do you think they're a good fit for any of these guys? We'll talk about what it means for the Chiefs if they lose them, but what about them and their ability to succeed in these spots?
I think all three of them should have different criteria in this cycle. I think Steve Spagnuolo probably can't afford to be picky. So I think
even though he's the one that has 3 offers or 3 interviews,
yes, because he's 65 years old, and we know what his head coaching record is. What was he, 11-41 when he actually got a job? And so I don't know that this is going to be an annual thing for Steve Spagnuolo to have 2-3 interviews. I wonder about the Jaguars job, to be honest, because I think Steve Spagnuolo probably looks at the Jaguars and says, the defense is the problem. That's what I can fix. And so I think the Jaguars job is intriguing. I think everything that Jeff said about New York makes sense. I mean, look, New York's got a tough media. We know that. He's dealt with that. He was a defensive coordinator there for a long time. Like, that's not going to be a shock to him. I think Matt Nagy's in a situation where he probably can afford to be more picky. I think he will get another shot at some point. I don't think he has to take the first offer that comes to him. And then Mike Borgonzi's criteria is just, what power do I have over the roster? And I think if he does get interview in Tennessee, which I do anticipate will happen, like, it's extremely unclear what's going on in Tennessee. First of all, what is apparent, though, is that the owner's impatient and expects the success to come immediate when you fire a GM after just 2 years, after firing the head coach the year before. Like, there's the expectation that you're going to be
2 GMs in 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, there's this expectation that you're going to be good right away. And that's a tough job. And based on what I've seen reported out there, I don't know that you're going to have final say over the roster in Tennessee. And so that's why I said these guys should have different criteria going into this. But Jeff's right. There's only 32 of these in the NFL. There's only 32 head coaches in the NFL. And I'm sure a guy like Spags is looking at it, and he wants to be a head coach. And I'm sure he's looking at it and saying, I don't know if I'm going to get this opportunity again if he does get an offer this year.
How about Matt Nagy though? Right now, I mean, looking just in the comment room. Nagy goes, grab Kafka. Flatlander's got a replacement. Nagy can go. It would be great if you could find a young coordinator with some fresh ideas. Ben, I hope Nagy goes. I want no part of him being the future head coach for the Chiefs. By the way, can I point out, and I think this is part of the reason why he's back on the list of guys getting looks, is like his tenure in Chicago looks a lot better. Sam mentioned what the record was for Steve Spagnuolo with the Rams. Well, 3 games over with 2 playoff appearances with Mitchell Trubisky as your quarterback, a guy you inherited, did not select. You inherited him. His tenure in Chicago looks a lot better now since we've seen what's happened in Chicago afterwards. How many offers is he going to have? And, he's the one only getting 1. Does that surprise you, Jeff?
Well, no, I heard the Saints were interested, so I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. I think Dan
maybe it did, and I missed it.
Yeah. Well, maybe, yeah, but formally, what we know of is the Jets. But no, I think it's, again, one, he's been a part of the last 2 championships here, so I don't think he's some kind of disaster, some tank on this organization. And 2, he's a smart guy. And 3, you're right, being saddled with a quarterback you inherited who has not had any success since he's left Chicago does help owners feel a little bit better about what you bring to the table. I have a feeling he'll get a job at some point, maybe not this cycle, but he'll be back in the mix. It's becoming more trendy for organizations for owners to go after coaches who've already been coaching in a previous stop and didn't, have great success. I think there's 3 or 4 guys in the league right now who are in that position. So I totally think he could be like a Todd Bowles type coach, where people forget Todd Bowles took the Jets to win one game of being in the playoffs and got fired and ended up having a pretty good run in Tampa Bay. I can see that for Matt Nagy easily.
Yeah, Nagy gets along with the quarterback. I think that's an important part of today's NFL. I don't think you want to be sideways in that situation. And he brings the Andy Reid game plan, right? Like, I think that's an important part of the equation. So I understand why teams, I don't know, somebody had a bold and daring prediction that both coordinators would get head coaching jobs. I'll have to go back and look who that was. I can't remember here off the top of my head. How much would it hurt?
Has it happened?
Listen,
they're taking victory laps.
When they're bold and daring, you get excited if you're getting close, right? Because when you're actually bold and daring, when you're conservative and soft, they'll play 17 games. When that's your bold and daring prediction, then it gets a little different. Sam, how much would it hurt the Chiefs to lose 1, 2, 3 of these guys?
A lot. And I know that, first of all, I think they're all valuable pieces of the Chiefs organization. And, Matt Nagy and Steve Spagnuolo are the, household names in Kansas City, if you will. But I really think that Mike Borgonzi would be a significant loss for this organization for all the reasons I outlined. I think he is just instrumental to what they do in the draft. And this is a team that has to build in the draft when they pay stars the way that they pay stars like Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes. Like, you're going to have to build through the draft. And by the way, you don't have great draft assets in a year because you're picking towards the end of it. Like, they're hamstrung before the draft even starts, and they've still done extremely well in it. So I think Mike Borgonzi would be a real loss, and he's been here for a long time. What's odd when you think about their front office over the years is, as disastrous as the Scott Pioli era was in Kansas City, he hired a lot of these guys. He hired Borgonzi, he hired Tillis, and he hired Poles. And it'd be kind of funny if he gets fired, but 3 of his guys, and I mean, Brant Tillis is number 2 in Carolina, but it feels like it's like 1A. And it'd be kind of strange if you've got 3 guys that are that high up, and it's a GM that really does not have a great reputation for being a GM, but really hired good people over the years. And so I think that'd be a loss. I know what the comment section that you threw up there, Soren, is saying about Matt Nagy, but I guess I don't understand the hate for Matt Nagy.
I don't either.
The offensive coordinator, for some reason, gets all the blame but none of the credit when the Chiefs are doing well. When the Chiefs are doing well, I mean, it's always Andy Reid. When the Chiefs are struggling, it's always the offensive coordinator. It's like they flip the responsibility. The same thing happened to Eric Bieniemy when he was here. It just it confuses me why Matt Nagy is viewed the way he is here.
Yeah, that's one for me. I think Matt Nagy would hurt because I don't see the ready replacement, but maybe they are more confident with someone. Somebody mentioned, just go get Mike Kafka or I honestly don't understand how Mike Kafka's time in New York has him interviewing for jobs. Like,
I think, I agree. I agree with you on that one. It's been,
well, we know Doug Peterson's out there as well.
That's the guy who I think might come back here.
I mean, there's names out there, but I still think Matt Nagy would be a loss.
I think he would be a loss. I think he'd be a loss because, one, I think he's a good fit with Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, we heard some things, but, somebody mentioned Eric Bieniemy back. I don't think Eric Bieniemy's coming back. Eric, we spent a year talking about that there was friction between the quarterback and Eric Bieniemy. Like that, he's not coming back because of that. And, you have to make sure that the quarterback is happy. We've seen quarterbacks get pissed, seen other positions, but occasionally it's quarterbacks. And when they want to leave, you're at their mercy. And I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think we're anywhere near that, but I think you don't even take a step in that direction. I think Spagnuolo hurts a lot though, Jeff. I mean, if he goes, like, he has done an amazing job. I mean, I think we think of it, okay, yeah, it's great. But all these championships have been won with him. Andy Reid is yet to win a Super Bowl without Steve Spagnuolo. Right. Yeah. The Parcells-Belichick thing is in effect right now with Steve Spagnuolo. Like, that one hurts a lot, I think, if he goes.
Yeah, I think that would be, I wouldn't say it would make them the most vulnerable they've ever been in the Mahomes era, because I think Mahomes and Reid are a big part of this, obviously. But yeah, it's hard to imagine that defense playing at as high of a level without him being around. And I don't know who could come in. Defense is such a unique thing, and the right personality with the right mix of personnel makes a huge difference. And I think Spagnuolo runs such a complicated system, and guys are so used to playing within it, and that if you take that away, he's the secret sauce. I don't think they're a top 10 defense without him around.
That last part that you said, Jeff, is exactly it. I mean, so much of what the Chiefs do and do well is because they're familiar with a system that's hard to get familiar with. Like, it takes guys a long time to be able to layer on what Steve Spagnuolo wants to layer on, and they're there. And so that element would be missing. And I think to a certain extent, even if you, let's say, promote from within with Dave Merritt or Joe Cullen or something like that, it still would be there'd be an element of feeling like you're starting from scratch.
It could be like Dan Quinn in Dallas and Mike Zimmer coming in. Look how bad the Dallas defense got when Mike Zimmer came in with a whole different idea about playing defense.
But I don't think there would be, if it is Dave Merritt, there wouldn't be a different idea theoretically. At least it would be the same idea. But it's you like having both those guys. It would be a problem as well. Never a problem when it comes to your insurance. If you know our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff, as well as your motorcycle, boat, ATV, and you name it. Get with Dave, and he'll get you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations: North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized, full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems? They've been making them disappear in KC since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your lot as safe as possible. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's start talking about who are the threats for the Kansas City Chiefs. They get the bye week, Jeff, but for winning a Super Bowl, who are the biggest threat? Who is the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs in winning a championship?
Buffalo Bills. It's a team that beat them. I mean, they've got the quarterback. They've got the familiarity. If you think about it, they've played 8 games against the Chiefs, since 2020. And so they've been in this stadium. They've won in this stadium, have won a playoff game here, but they came within 13 seconds of doing that. Like the balance. They've got the confidence. I think this is the best version of the Buffalo Bills we've seen since Josh Allen's been there. And having beaten the Chiefs gives them, and the Lions for that matter, I think gives them a lot of confidence going to the postseason. I think Baltimore is interesting, but Lamar Jackson has to show he can make the high pressure plays, and The Chargers are, I think, underrated because of Harbaugh, but again, they got to do it too.
That's interesting. Do we give more credit to Josh Allen because of he lost by 13 seconds, by the way, in the divisional round? But the 13-second game is like he gets credit for winning that a lot because it was the defense, it was McDermott, it was that because Lamar Jackson was in the AFC Championship game last year. I know they only scored 10 points, but was close. I mean, do we give does Josh Allen get a little bit of a free pass because of
Lamar Jackson in his career in the postseason has never made as many plays as Josh Allen made in that one playoff game. Josh Allen did superhuman things in that game. He wasn't the reason they lost.
Sam, are you on the Bills as well as being the biggest threat?
Well, I mean, Josh Allen is 5-5 in his playoff career, which obviously I think the Ravens are the best team right now.
By the way, 5-5 is good because, like,
that's my point.
You can't win next week, so a loss ends it. Then you got to go through a whole season, get back there. So that's actually a really good record.
Yeah, I mean that was my point. Is that Lamar is 2-4, so 5-5 looks pretty good comparatively, but I think the Ravens are the best team in the league right now. I think they're the only knock on the Ravens, because they are clearly far and away, in whatever metric you want to use, the best offensive team. They're number one in pass DVOA. They're number one in rush DVOA. They're number one in explosive plays. Like, they have, I think, 12 more explosive runs than any team in the league. They have more explosive pass plays. Like, they are terrific offensive, and like 40 more yards per game than any other team in the league. What's changed about the Ravens is they're really good defensively over the last like 7 weeks. And there's been some studies in Baltimore about what they've done. And what they've done is just move Kyle Hamilton back to safety and stop asking him to play cornerback. Like, hey, let's have our best player play his best position. And suddenly their defense looks a lot different. They're not giving up the same explosive plays. They actually lead the league defensively in yards per play allowed over the last 8 weeks of the season. Like, the Ravens are really good defensively now, and they're really good offensively. But I think it's totally legitimate to wonder what the Ravens can accomplish in the playoffs, given that this quarterback does not have – it's not just the record. That's the difference in that 13-second game, as Jeff mentioned. It's like Josh Allen did everything he could in that game. Threw for 3 touchdowns, threw for over 300 yards, had like 80 yards rushing and another touchdown. Lamar Jackson hasn't had those kinds of losses. A lot of the losses are like last year's AFC Championship game where you score 10 points and you're wondering – where did the offense go in the postseason? So I do think that it matters that even if he hasn't done it in the playoffs, Josh Allen has won at Arrowhead Stadium 3 times, that he becomes a different beast in the playoffs in terms of his running threat, to where his rushing success against the Chiefs is better than Lamar Jackson's rushing success against the Chiefs. He's had, in 3 playoff games, he's rushed for 228 yards in 3 playoff games against the Chiefs. Like, that is a legitimate thing that Jeff in particular has talked a lot about this season, is the type of quarterback that gives the Chiefs trouble is the guy who can maneuver outside the pocket. And this isn't a defensive line that the last time they played Josh Allen was great about staying home and staying in the lanes to prevent a scrambling quarterback. So I still think the Bills are the biggest threat to the Chiefs in particular, even as I think that the Ravens are the best team right now.
Yeah, I'm on the Baltimore Ravens. So you're taking away. Hang on, because I already wrote down Ravens. So you're going Buffalo Bills.
I think the Bills are a tougher matchup. When you just look at matchups for the Chiefs, I think the Bills are a tougher matchup for the Chiefs, even as I think the Ravens are the best team in the league right now.
I think that everything that I have no complaint, and I agree with everything that's been said. Right. Let me say that first of all, as far as analyzing the players and what's going on. I do think the Buffalo Bills, teams like this, a lot of times, I think of the Kerry Collins 13-3 Tennessee Titans, the Randall Cunningham 15-1 Vikings. You see these teams that have, and I think Josh Allen's career is going to go on clearly better than Kerry Collins, right? Randall Cunningham was phenomenal that year for the Vikings, but he's going to be considered a better quarterback. And so I do think that they are better than those teams I mentioned. But I think there's a little bit of an element of they got things rolling, and that it just was this body in motion. But in the playoffs, it's so matchup driven. It's so everything that is going to grind down. It's just different when you get to the playoffs. And I think the Ravens are the better team, like Sam said, and I think that's going to show. And I think if those two play each other, I think the Ravens will win. right? I think they will beat the Bills. Therefore, I think they're the bigger threat. I think Baltimore is on a roll. I think their defense playing well. I think the Ravens feel a little bit like last year's Chiefs, like along the way. And I know that the Bills, to a degree, Josh Allen said all the right things. Maybe he's of that mindset that, he said, well, we're tired of winning regular season games against these guys. What's going to matter is in the postseason. That's the right thing to say. And maybe I'll look back and the Bills are going to steamroll everybody. I'm like, well, I was totally wrong about that. The Bills are it. But the Ravens, to me, John Harbaugh is the better coach between those two. And I think we all agree it comes down to these two, right? More so than, say, the Lions or the Eagles are waiting in the Super Bowl. Do we agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, okay.
But by the way, Soren, I also think the Ravens would beat the Bills. I'm picking the toughest matchup for the Chiefs, the team that I think that they don't want to face heads up. I think the toughest matchup they could have is the Bills. When the Ravens play the Bills next week, I will be picking the Ravens to win that game. I agree with you. I think that they're a better team right now, but that's based on those matchups, which is the Bills' defense is struggling. The Chiefs have not they haven't put up 30 points against these teams that have bad defenses. The Ravens will. If you've got a bad defense, the Ravens will kill you. And so I do think that the Bills-Ravens game, I would pick the Ravens to win, even as I think that and I realize feels like it's talking out of both sides of my mouth, but you mentioned it's matchup driven. And that's what I'm talking about. Matchup-wise, I think the Bills are a tougher matchup for the Chiefs, even if I think the Ravens are a better team.
One thing I'll say about that and the Bills' run defense is suspect, but when they played the Lions, who have probably the first or second best running game in the league, they shut it down. And that game was 35-14 with 7 minutes to play in the third quarter, which tells me the Bills can actually muster the strength to resolve that weakness when it matters. So I don't think that they played once and the Ravens won going away. I think it's a different result this time around.
I don't know why the Lions would have run that game because they threw for 500 yards. So they probably stopped calling the run plays.
Well, they had to throw, right? They were down 14-0.
Yeah, I do think that as we all sat here talking about the fact that the Bills and Ravens have to go through each other is the ultimate kiss for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they love it. But I'll take the Ravens to be the toughest. How about we mentioned Lamar Jackson, we mentioned Josh Allen. Let's throw in Joe Burrow, maybe even Justin Herbert here. Are we watching the other AFC quarterbacks catch up to Patrick Mahomes, or statistically speaking, is he just weighed down by an offense that's not as good as it used to be, Sam?
But before I say that any quarterback has caught up to Patrick Mahomes, like one of these guys has to beat him in the playoffs. I mean, none of the
catching up, didn't say caught.
Well, still, I still think you got to beat him once. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has beaten all of these quarterbacks but he's not in the playoffs. Like none of the, and I think, for all of the MVP talk about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, those are the two guys I would pick. For the AFC Pro Bowl roster with those two guys and Joe Burrow, I have no problem with those being the three choices over Patrick Mahomes. But I guarantee you, like all the conversation in these other cities is about can you beat Patrick Mahomes? It's not about whether or not you can beat the presumptive MVP favorite in Josh Allen or the guy that's probably going to finish runner-up in Lamar Jackson, who had his career already has won a couple of these and has a career best year and is not going to win. Like those conversations are still about whether or not you can beat Patrick Mahomes because none of them have done it in the playoffs. And so until that happens, I don't think that you can say that the gap has been closed.
Really? So it's 0 or 100.
Yeah,
that's not zero
any closer. And caught up.
Well, that's under the assumption that I don't already think that I think the gap is 0 to 100, which I don't.
No, but like this year, I think the spirit of the subject is this year have those quarterbacks gotten closer to Patrick Mahomes? Has Mahomes backed up? Have they moved forward? Do you think the gap between them is closer?
No, I think one of them needs to beat this quarterback in the playoffs before I can say that they've closed the gap on him.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Look at last year. Doesn't count though. So Joe Burrow doesn't count.
He's not in the playoffs.
That.
Yeah, but
he's beaten him before.
Like,
so
but you're using
better.
So, but the question is not what the gap is; it's whether or not he's closed the gap.
Right.
He already beat him 3 years ago. Why did he close the gap this year on him?
Well, but you're saying. It's just like the standard is different for the different quarterbacks, I guess.
No, he's already beaten him. Like Joe Burrow's already beaten him.
Right, which is what you're saying
that's part of the criteria going into the season is that Joe Burrow's already beaten him. Like he didn't.
There's nothing anybody could ever do in the regular season that would make you go, okay.
Look at what Patrick Mahomes did last year. All the conversation.
If Patrick Mahomes doesn't make the playoffs for the next 10 years, these guys, too bad. You're still in his rearview mirror because you haven't beaten him in the postseason.
Well, you do advance past him in the postseason if he doesn't even make the playoffs.
Okay.
All the conversation last year was about, we had this, I mean, everyone was having this exact conversation last year, and look what happened. He beat those guys on their turf in the playoffs. Goes and beats Josh Allen, goes and outperforms both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in the playoffs and beats them at their place.
Yeah, I think Sam sees it as a question of it's like the overall, the team part of it, the stature, the championships. I think it's more, for me, it's more of an individual question. Like if you ask me, where was Lamar Jackson at in year one and Josh Allen and where they are now, I think they've definitely closed the gap on him as a player. I think these guys are doing historical things, and that includes Joe Burrow too, for that matter. It's.
I'm eager to see what Joe Burrow would look like with. You hate Hollywood Brown. What would Joe Burrow look like with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy as his top two wide receivers?
First of all, don't do the straw man thing. Don't say you hate Hollywood Brown.
Well, my point is, like Joe Burrow's got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
But that was the argument against Josh Allen, right? When he had Stephon Diggs. What's he going to be like when he loses?
Not mine. I think all three of us on this podcast said that the Bills would be better without Stephon Diggs. I remember all three of us making that argument.
Yeah, but
nobody thinks that the Bengals are going to be better without T. Higgins next year, right?
No.
Well, we don't know that. I mean, I think until you put the guy in the position, they thought Patrick Mahomes was going to go downhill when he lost Tyreek Hill and he won an MVP. Yeah. I mean, I think the point that I'm making is I think the gap has been closed because these guys are better players now. I don't think that they're no one's sitting here arguing that Patrick Mahomes is not the best quarterback in the NFL or not the best player in the NFL.
I like the way you put it, Jeff, because I would say, does anybody think Patrick Mahomes got better this year?
Yeah. No.
And appreciably. Yeah. Like, did he have to learn to play with the left tackle that sucks? I mean, somebody pointed that out in the comments. And I think it's a good point. Yeah, he did. He had to work even more. I mean, you're learning every year. Everybody's getting a little bit. But did we see an appreciable jump out of Patrick Mahomes? No, but no,
I don't think so either. To that question.
Okay, so and I think the gap. The question is, did they close the gap? The question is, and maybe I should have said close it to agree. Like, have they caught up? No. If that's your point, Sam, that they're not caught up, I agree. But have they brought it closer? I say yes. I think Lamar Jackson, another year with a bad taste in his mouth. I thought he played great. 41-4. He had the fewest interceptions of any quarterback. There have been 20.
I'd vote for him for MVP. I'd vote for him for MVP.
Right, but that's my point. He played at a higher level than he's ever played. I think he got appreciably better. 4 interceptions. No one's ever thrown that few interceptions with that many touchdowns. Not Aaron Rodgers, not Tom Brady, not Peyton Manning. I mean, he was magnificent as a passer this year. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. And so for that standpoint, Lamar alone, and I think Josh Allen winning without weapons, he got better. I think the answer is yes. The gap was closed. The gap is closer. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Close makes it sound like they're even. No, they're not even. And I think, Sam, your measuring stick of you want to be the man, beat the man. And they're measured by postseason. I'm fine with that. But I do think that they got closer to Patrick Mahomes this year.
I mean, my criteria was the way that Jeff had outlined it. When you talk about stature within the league, like that was my criteria for this question, is I think in order to get the stature, one of these guys, and look, the odds are it will happen this year. Like the field over Mahomes is the safer play. So odds are one of these guys will advance past Patrick Mahomes this year. I'm just saying, I think that has to happen before I say that the gap is closed. I viewed the question the way that Jeff had outlined that I viewed the question.
Okay. Well, it's all right. You can backpedal. We're okay with that. Don't worry about that, Sam. We'll get into the go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know that Josh Allen hasn't had a year like this before. I'm surprised that he is just this presumptive favorite to win the MVP, because everything you just said about Lamar Jackson, I don't know why Lamar Jackson's not the MVP this year.
I think people don't want to. I think if Lamar Jackson hadn't won it, he would win it. He would run
100% agree with you.
The fact that he's
I
won it
to your
twice
point,
and
Sam,
not delivered. Sorry, Jeff. I think he has won it twice and not delivered in the postseason. Has people wanting to vote for somebody else.
100%. Totally agree.
Well, I would say that to your point, Sam, I think if he won the first game of the season, he'd probably be the MVP. I think that takes him. I think Josh Allen beating Patrick Mahomes and beating the Lions makes him look a lot better.
That's a great point. All right. The 4 potential opponents. Who's the toughest challenge for the Chiefs? We'll get into that next after you hear from our friends at Whataburger. Whataburger is proud to sponsor the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Now at all your KC Whataburger locations, and for a limited time only, get your Whata Wings tossed in any of your favorite flavors, including the new Nashville Hot. Or get your hands on fire you can handle with the all-new, perfectly spicy Bacon Blaze Jalapeno Double. Get a kick this football season with these great new limited-time Whataburger favorites. Stop by any of the Kansas City Whataburger locations today. Whataburger's open 24 hours a day.
Unlock a premium dispensary experience at Key Cannabis. Visit any one of our 12 Key Cannabis locations across Missouri for a huge selection of cannabis products and expert recommendations from Missouri's friendliest bud tenders. Quick service, convenient online ordering, drive-through pickup, and a fantastic loyalty program. Plus, Key Cannabis offers discounts for veterans, med patients, cannabis industry professionals, seniors, first responders, and students. Visit us in KC North, South KC, and Belton. Open 7 days a week, or shop online at keycannabis.com. Key Cannabis, open for premium cannabis experiences.
All right, let's talk about who the Chiefs could be facing. They've got the Texans, Chargers, Steelers, or Broncos coming their way. Jeff, you want to throw down what you think the toughest matchups are, how it would rank in your mind for the Chiefs to have difficulty trying to get by those guys?
You mean in terms of who I think could beat them? And then
yes, best chance to beat the Chiefs in order.
Do you want me to throw in just real quick the implied odds of each of these teams that they'd face? This is based on the betting market and just like the implied odds that the Chiefs would face them in the first round. Obviously, the Chiefs play the lowest remaining seed. So the Broncos have a 20% chance of beating the Bills, and therefore it would be the Broncos if that happens. They've got a 20% chance. The Steelers are a little less than 20%, but they don't have priorities, so the Steelers have a 16% chance of playing the Chiefs in the first round. The Chargers are at 38% because they're favored in that game against the Texans, and the Texans are at 26%. So those are the chances that those teams have to face the Chiefs in the divisional round.
All right, but then there's the matchup aspect of it as to who would be the toughest.
100%, yeah.
For them to go with, Jeff. Who do the Chiefs not want to see?
Chargers. To me, it's not even close. It's the Chargers because
is it the Chargers and the rest, or is there?
Oh, Chargers and then Broncos. I think they would love to see the Texans come in here, or the Steelers. Either one of those teams showing up here would be a early Christmas gift, 2025. The Chargers, to me, the Chargers are the tougher team than the Broncos, just because Justin Herbert's a better quarterback than Bo Nix, and he's played in the playoffs. And he's been in this league a lot longer. I like what Sean Payton has done with Denver. I like their defense. I just think back to that Bengals game when they were down 14-3 and Bo Nix was doing nothing. And I think offensively, they got to do a lot of scheming to keep up with teams that can score points, which is why I don't like them against the Bills. The Chargers are built for the playoffs, and they've got a head coach who has won in this league in the playoffs and taken his team to a Super Bowl. They limit penalties, protect the football, they run it down your throat, and they get after you with their pass rush and their defense. And so, look, they came here a few weeks ago and almost beat this team. Took a doink field goal for the win at the end. And that's without Ladd McConkey, without J.K. Dobbins. And so I think that game is going to be a really tough match. Hard to beat a team 3 times.
Okay. Sam, what's your order?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything Jeff said. I think the Chargers are clearly the toughest matchup. And I thought I'd be the only one here, but I think that the Broncos are clearly the second toughest matchup, even though they're the 7th seed and the last team in. And then I think the Steelers or Texans are the teams that you're really hoping to come to Kansas City next week. And the reason that the Chargers are really tough, and I did put an asterisk on this in a column this week. Like, they're 2-5 against playoff teams, and both those wins are against Denver. They've gotten crushed by some of the other teams. When you look at the Chiefs matchups in particular, they're really good where the Chiefs typically like to exploit teams. And it's the reason that 2 of the 3 lowest scoring outputs for Patrick Mahomes led teams this year are against the Chargers. 2 of the 3. The lowest was against the Broncos at home. And then the next 2 Chargers games are the next 2 games on the list. And the reason for that is, like, they've moved Derwin James to a slot cornerback mostly. Well, the Chiefs really like to operate a lot of their offense out of the slot. And then the other thing they're really good is they're the number 1 DVOA team in defending short passes.
Yeah.
Nobody throws more short passes in the entire NFL than the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes has the lowest average depth of target in the league. Like, the Chargers are good where the Chiefs typically exploit teams. And so I think that's just clearly the toughest matchup for them.
Yeah, I would put the Broncos in this spot if they didn't just play them and beat them, and that score I think will have the Chiefs. Not that you're not going to be fired up for any opponent. I just think the Broncos have kind of made their statement. I think it'd be tough to come back and do it again. I do think moving forward, the Broncos look like a really rough matchup as well. But I think you're right. I think the Chargers are the team that they don't want to see. So, I think that's important for the Texans to try to get by. And I think the odds are right. In fact, I think they're higher than 38% that's who they're going to see. I go Chargers, Broncos, Steelers, Texans, because I give Mike Tomlin a fighting chance in any game. Plus, we've seen, the team that had the only team with a longer losing streak coming into the playoffs was the 86 Jets. And they turned around and played fine. That year, they actually beat the Chiefs that year in the playoffs. So I don't think that the Steelers have lost to good teams. They're not coming in with 4 losses against Huckleberries, right? Like, I think the Steelers will be fine when they play, and I think they give the Ravens fits. So they might actually get by. That, I think, is probably the hope for the Chiefs, because I don't think the Texans have any shot against the Chargers. Well, I think if the Ravens and Bills hold serve, then you're going to see the Chargers. And I think that's the team out of the 4 you could see that you don't want to see. So I think Chiefs fans Saturday night better be rooting their ass off for the Baltimore Ravens, because I think that's the one that's going to give them the problems, right? Like, they don't want to see the Chargers. And I think what keeps them from seeing the Chargers is the Steelers getting through, right? Like, do you give
think the Steelers can beat the Ravens?
I do think they can beat the Ravens. Yeah, I think
they will.
A lot of for the same reason we're talking about the Chargers, and Broncos being a difficulty for the Chiefs. I mean, the division, Lamar Jackson sucks against the Steelers.
So the reason why he sucks against the Steelers is the Steelers allow the fewest scramble yards in the league by a ton. They've allowed less than 100 scramble yards in the league this season. Like, all season, they've allowed quarterbacks to scramble for less than 100 yards. That's why Lamar Jackson has trouble against the Steelers.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the games and who we think is going to deliver. Let's get through the AFC here, Jeff. You want to do the honors? Chargers at Texans. The spread is 3. We're not picking it with the spread. We're just saying who we think is going to win the game, but just for informational purposes. These spreads are from last night. So if I make a mistake, by the way, we're recording here, 9:00 on Friday morning. So I apologize if these have changed around a little bit, but Chargers by 3. At the Texans, you got Chargers. Jeff, I assume?
Chargers, yeah. I can't get behind a team that scored 21 points against the Chiefs and the Ravens. The last 2 meaningful games they played. I think that Texans are a disaster right now.
I assume you're in exactly the same spot, Sam.
Yep. Chargers.
Yeah, I've got the Chargers. I do see a scenario. I mean, the Texans have been there. They're not gonna freak out, but they just always, this is kind of who they are. Every playoff game they've played in the Saturday early slot.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
I mean, nobody wants to watch.
Yeah, it's like, we'll carry this when everybody's out running errands.
Yeah.
Throw the Texans in there. I mean, and maybe that'll be a motivator for why we're going early again. What the hell?
They do have a good defense. Like, I don't want to discount the Texans not having a chance. Like, they do have a really good defense.
But they've got no weapons left on offense at receiver outside of Collins.
Yeah, if the Texans win, it's a 16-13 win or something like that.
And Collins doesn't look that good right now. That's a problem for them as well. All right, Steelers and Ravens. Jeff, I assume you're going Baltimore based upon your reaction to me.
Yeah, unlike you, I have very little faith in the Steelers offense right now. I thought Pickens was going to make him better, and when he came back and he hasn't, I just don't see how they score enough points to keep up with the Ravens in that one.
Okay. I know, Sam, you are a noted Steelers hater.
I think
Have
the
been
Steelers
for
stink.
years.
Yeah.
There's no chance you're going to pick the Pittsburgh Steelers here, are you?
No, like I said, I could understand why the Ravens were probably like, I don't feel like that's the team we want to see because of the matchup stuff. But the Steelers stink right now, and for all the conversation about their offense struggling, the reason the Steelers stink right now is their defense has seen a free fall over the last 4 weeks. They've allowed 27 points per game over this 4-game losing streak. Like their defense isn't playing well either. If you don't have that, I don't know what you have in Pittsburgh.
Secondary's beat up.
Yeah.
The defense isn't playing well, but I think part of it is that the offense sucks. The offense keeps throwing them back out there. I mean, I think that's part of the problem for I think if the offense would play a little bit better, they would look better on defense. But I agree with you. I too have the Baltimore Ravens winning. I'll be rooting. I kind of like the Steelers.
Reluctantly saying it.
Well, because as a Chiefs fan, I want the Steelers to advance. I do think the Steelers will cover. I think they'll make it either Baltimore's going to crush them like 41-10, or it'll be 23-17, 23-20, something like that. A typical divisional rock fight. I think one of those two things will happen. It's 9.5 the spread in that one. Broncos are getting 8 from the Bills. I don't think any of us are taking Denver, are we? I mean, we're all on Buffalo, aren't we, Jeff?
No. It'll be a tougher game than the spread suggests, but yeah, I feel as if this is Buffalo in this game, being at home, having the playoff experience matters, and look at their games against the Chargers, the Bengals, the Ravens. That defense, as good as it has been giving up 30 points to all those teams. I think the Bills get there too.
Let me phrase it. Let's phrase it this way then. Who's got the better chance at an upset, the Broncos or the Steelers?
I think
Steelers.
I think the Broncos have a better chance at an upset, just because I look at
because you hate Pittsburgh.
Well, I think the Broncos are a better team than the Steelers are. I mean, the Broncos have the number 1 defense in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
So and look, where the Broncos are really good. You talk about the Chargers being built for the playoffs. Where the Broncos are really good is up front on both sides of the ball. They're really good up front on both. They're the best offensive line in the league. Yeah. ESPN ranks them as their analytics ranks them as number 1 at pass blocking and run blocking in the league. So like, I
saw Joe Burrow go through them like a knife through butter, my man.
Well, I think we're all picking the Bills. I just thought, since it's so clear that I think we're all picking the Ravens and Bills, the more interesting way was to say which team has a better chance at an upset. And I think the Broncos have a better chance at an upset than the Steelers do.
Okay. I'm on Buffalo as well. I just don't think the Broncos are ready. Next year, they may be the 1 seed in the AFC, but it's not time yet. NFC playoffs, we'll get to them. We'll also give you our Super Bowl pick right after you hear from our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff, as well as your motorcycle, boat, ATV, and you name it. Get with Dave, and he'll get you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations: North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk a little bit about the NFC. Those games, Packers 4.5, getting 4.5. They go to Philadelphia. Injuries at both quarterback positions make this one a little bit more interesting. Who advances here, Jeff?
I like the Eagles. Seeing Hurts back out there on the field gives me some confidence. I don't know exactly where his head is at, if he'll have any setbacks, but it feels like he's had a month to get through this, which is 1 week less than Tua had to get back from his concussion from Miami. Eagles had the best roster in football, the most talent, and God, the Packers without Jair Alexander and Christian Watson, those are some big losses. So I'll go with the Eagles.
Okay, Sam.
Yeah, I've got the Eagles for all the same reasons as Jeff. I think if you had asked me this a month ago, I would have picked the Packers. But the injuries and look, Jordan Love is still only limited in practice, and I think that's a real thing with his elbow. So I've got the Eagles.
Yeah, I was all gung ho to be riding the Packers deep into this and be talking about the Packers representing the NFC in the Super Bowl, and now the Eagles is a tough matchup. The fact that they got to turn around and play Philadelphia first. When I was kind of thinking that, I was thinking they were going to be seated higher, and now they've got to face the Eagles and they're banged up. I can't do it. I think it's too bad because I think they got a team that could really make some damage. But I'm on the Eagles as well. Commanders get 3 to go down to Tampa. Jeff, Bucks, Commanders, where are you?
The Bucks are always a little bit of a weird team to pick just because they can be up and down like they were last week against the Saints and losing to the Cowboys, but they got a ton of offense. I like their offensive line, Bucky Irvin, the run game, Baker with a chip on his shoulder. And I just don't – same thing with Bo Nix, like rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs. They tend to struggle, and the Commanders don't have enough defense to slow that offense down. So I'll go Tampa.
Okay, Sam.
Yeah, I went back and forth on this, but I don't want to be fully chalk here with all the favorites. So I think this is the best upset spot. So I've got the Commanders. I do think even though Baker Mayfield's had a pretty good year, I still think that the Commanders have the better quarterback, and the Bucks Jeff said it. I mean, they do some weird things to where you can't figure out why they're in a game with the Saints in the fourth quarter. And they're really hard to predict because I don't know which Bucks team's going to show up, but I'm gonna say that the Commanders get them.
Baker can win you a game. Baker can lose you a game. And I'm with you. I don't want to be there's going to be somebody that gets an upset. It's not going to be all the home teams, all the favorites. So I go with Washington on that one. I really was, like I said, my plan was the Packers a long time ago. That's the spot I was going to be in, but I can't go there. I do think Washington's dangerous. Like Dan Quinn's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. I think Jane Daniels is really good. Dual threat quarterback is a tough thing to bear. You got a little bit of that with Baker Mayfield as well. He'll take off and run. It's a tough assignment for Washington as well. But I'll take Washington because I do think I also don't like Todd Bowles' game management. I think if it's tight, he might screw something up. So I like Todd Bowles, the coach, but like not going for 2 against Kansas City, that was a big mistake. And if there's a time where you have to be bold, you have to go for it on 4th down. I don't think he will. He'll just do what the book has always said, and I think that'll be a problem. I think Quinn's more likely to push the envelope there. Vikings 2.5-point favorites now in a neutral field against the Rams. I don't know how it works with tickets. I haven't bothered, but they're going to play in Glendale. The Vikings are now the 2.5-point favorite against the Rams. Jeff?
A lot happening in LA this week. You can't tell me that doesn't affect the Rams players, their families, all that stuff. And really, I saw the Rams score 44 points against Buffalo, and they've been kicking field goals ever since.
Yeah.
They scored 12, they scored 19, they scored 13. And so I don't know where that offense went, if they used it all up that day against the Bills, but I can't get excited about a team that is having that much trouble scoring points when you're talking about going against a Vikings team that can score a lot of points. I like the Vikings big, especially because they lost out there before, and it was a controversial call at the end.
Okay. Tell me, Sam, where are you on Vikings and Rams?
Yeah, to add to what Jeff said, I mean, those games that they scored 12, 13, and 19 came against the Jets, Cardinals, and 49ers, like 3 teams that did not come that close to making the playoffs this year. So I do have questions about the Rams offense against a good Vikings defense that's pretty creative. So I've got the Vikings, and certainly all thoughts are with people in LA, but it's hard not to imagine that affecting the team that's based out of LA.
I think it affects you one way or the other. Either it drags you down because your focus is distracted. You're moving people. I mean, I've got a friend who had to flee for the fire and get away from it a couple of days ago. And so I know it's just something we're thinking about as to where they are. And so, yes, I do agree with that. But I think it can also galvanize a team and bring them together. It is also Sean McVay, who I think is a hell of a coach. And Minnesota, I mentioned the Kerry Collins Titans, right? That's this team. Like if you think Sam Darnold is ready to be one of the elites in the NFL, then let me tell you about guys named Kerry Collins, Mark Rippon, even Case Keenum in Minnesota, guys that have looked great for one shining moment, and usually they get to the postseason and it peters out. And that's what happens here. The Rams win.
Wow.
They win for the people of Los Angeles and get it done. So I'll take the Rams to upset, not by seed, but by point spread, upset the Minnesota Vikings. Super Bowl picks. First of all, do you love your Super Bowl pick? Does anybody love it? Think it's like you're ready to rock, or do you think it's pretty wide open?
I think it's wide open. I mean, it's been the same pick for me for the last month, so I'm sticking with it. I got Bills and Lions.
Bills over Lions?
Bills over Lions. Yep.
Okay. Bills over Detroit. Been easy for him. Sam?
Yeah, I'm with you, Soren. I thought this was a really tough pick because I think there's 3 teams in the AFC that you can make a very good case for, all 3 of them. And so because of that, I'm going to go with the one team that only has to play one of these other games and that also has won a ton of close games at the end, because I think anytime those 3 teams match up, the Ravens, Bills, and Chiefs, we're going to be talking about the last 2 minutes of the game. And the Chiefs have just executed extremely well over the last 2 minutes of the game this season. It's the reason that their starters went 15-1 this year. So if it's a coin flip game that comes down to the end, I think you have to pick the team that's been there and executed in those moments. So I've got the Chiefs, and I agree with Jeff on the Lions, but I've actually got the Lions over the Chiefs, though.
Lions over the Chiefs. Okay. All right. Maybe change. I had already put in Detroit. I knew you were going to go there.
Sam's killing you here.
I've got the same 2 teams Sam does, but I got it the other way around. Come on now.
Of course you do. You gotta show your face in this town.
That's right. Giant, big, fat, giant homer. That's what I am. Look, I don't. I do think that the only having the 2 games is important, right? And so I think in both those teams are there. I would jump on the Eagles. The Eagles would be the one that I would take and say, okay, the Lions aren't going to get there as the number 1 seed, and I would jump on them, except for the fact that I think Green Bay's, even with the injuries, like if Jordan Love plays, I think that's scary. So that first game, I mean, the bye week means so much. So I'll go Chiefs and Lions, and if they get there, how do you pick against Patrick Mahomes? You tell me you're going to come sit down at a table at the Super Bowl, Jeff, and do an interview, and you're not going to be like, the man is here. This is what he does. You know, he's got a 750 win percentage in the Super Bowl. Jared Goff is 0.
Is that 1,000?
No, but it's a lot higher than 0.
So
Jared Goff
can happen.
1.
So you're telling me there's a chance. What you're telling me.
Not with Jared Goff, not with that win percentage. Yeah. No. But yeah, I think Chiefs and Lions are what we're looking at. Listen, you can always support the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast by supporting our great sponsors like David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Give his crew a call at 816-781-7331, helping you with all your insurance needs. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, more than 30 years solving parking lot problems in Kansas City. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Don't forget, Whataburger, open 24 hours a day, and now at all your KC Whataburger locations for limited time only. Get your Whata Wings. They're absolutely fantastic. We love them at my house. Tossed in any of your favorite flavors, including the new Nashville Hot, which is outstanding. I love that. And Key Cannabis. Key Cannabis offers discounts for veterans, med patients, cannabis industry professionals, seniors, first responders, and students. Open 7 days a week. Shop online at keycannabis.com. For Jeff Chadiha of the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.